Hello, welcome back. Fina here from Fina Reads, today with my July wrap-up, and it feels like August is half over already, and I'm wrapping up kind of late, but that's okay. And my just general bi-weekly ramblings for the books that I've read over the last 2 weeks. Spoiler alert, it's going to be less than the ramblings before, because I don't have PTO anymore, so I don't have all day to just read. Before I dive into those books, though, I wanted to just summarize July quickly. No worries, I'm not talking about every book that I've read in detail. I already did that throughout all the book ramblings. There's just one book missing from my July stack that I haven't talked in as much detail about yet, but I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, let's start with just some July stats. It has been a very good month from the amount of books that I read. Not such a good month from the rating perspective, but we'll see. So I read 11 books, one of those was a DNF. Out of those 11 books, 5 were fantasy, 1 horror, 4 romance/graphic novels, and then 1 nonfiction. 6 of those were adult books, 5 were YA. And then from an author perspective, I had 3 male, 3 female authors, and now I definitely had to track non-binary authors because 2 of the authors that I read are non-binary, and one of the authors I read 4 books from. From a ratings perspective, I had 3 5-star reads, 4 4-star reads, 3 3-star, well that's kind of convenient, and 1 2-star read. And I started about 3 new series and continued 3, but again I read 4 books in one series, which one was the start and 3 continuations. And one of the continuation in this series was unfortunately the DNF. Just to go through it real quick, so I started my July with An Alchemy of Masks and Mirrors by Curtis Craddock. I continued the Grand Rider read-along with Firebrand from Kristen Britton, book 6 in the series. Jake and I buddy read Blaze by Richard Bachman, aka Stephen King. That was my DNF, which is The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. I read about 150 or so more pages in this book and then unfortunately decided, you know what, I'm just not in the right mood for this right now. It's a soft DNF. I might pick it up at a later point again. It's just not a right now book. Then I read all 4 of the Heartstopper graphic novels. I'm only holding up book 1, but I read all 4 of them. Editing Josephine here. I forgot one book. I also read Out of the Blue, which was a fun YA fantasy romance book, kinda. I got it from a library. That's why I forgot it. I didn't have it physically sitting here in my little stack. So I read that too. My 2-star read was The Great Pretender by Susanna Cahalan. While it was interesting, it was just too sensational and, you know, written like one of those TV shows that you watch where everything is, oh my god, and totally exaggerated. That's what this book was. And the last book that I read in July, and with that we're also jumping into a little bit more detail about the books that I've read since our last Ramblings check-in. That would be the first book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series, which is Curse of the Mistwraith by Janny Wurts. And I can't even talk anymore. It has been a long day. So this little chunker, I finished that in July, on the last day of July, so I really made it. I'm so happy about this. If you've listened to any of the prior ramblings, you know that I already talked a little bit about how dense this book is, and I still have that opinion. I'm a bit tricky with the rating on this one, so just for now, and I'm pretty sure the rating will change as I continue with the series, but for now, this on its own, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, which is not a bad thing. It's still a good book in my opinion. It's just very dense. So what I think is interesting about this book is you can have a lot of discussions about it because it uses such a big vocabulary on its own. And there's a lot of vast description for the world well, unfortunately not the characters as much. I would have loved more description on the characters. That was one of the things that I really missed is character work. Prose and world building is very big in this one, and I'm sure it will continue as we move along. I'm still a little bit on the, so I am on the, this is really a work of art because she expressed things in a way that are very different than you traditionally find in any book, really. And I actually think it falls more towards the literary section because she uses like such an impressive prose in describing certain things, but it also makes it more difficult and less accessible for people like me where English is not necessarily the first language, and I had my difficulties getting into that. It gets better as you're getting used to her writing style, and as you get an understanding for you don't need necessarily every single word. But even then, there's still sometimes just sentences where I read them 3-4 times and was like, I don't even know what this sentence is supposed to tell me. And then it pulled me out of the story and distracted me and didn't allow me to really immerse myself into the story. And that was a problem for me. The things that I gathered were really fascinating. And I think the plot itself and the premise itself is really unique and fascinating. So real quick, it's about half-brothers that hate each other, and they've hated each other for generations. Like, those two families have hated each other for generations. And the book starts out with them being in their world, in an is it called naval fight when they're on the sea? Anyway, it's like ships fighting with each other, and one of them gets captured by the other. They end up being thrown out of the country through a portal that leads into a different world, and then they have to survive in that world, and there's a prophecy waiting for them in that world. So the majority of the book is about them coming to terms with their prophecy and what their point in that world is. You know, if you only understood half of the book, it's hard to explain it. So, but the premise itself sounded very interesting, and the two brothers are so different and so fascinating. There are a lot of interesting side characters. So from a plot perspective, I find it fascinating. From, as I already said, character perspective, not so much. I definitely missed character work. I'm a very character-driven reader, so I kind of missed that, and I would have loved a lot more character depth. I was confused at times on the motivation of the characters, especially sometimes it just switched, and all of a sudden they did something that didn't fit to the picture of the character. I don't know if that was meant to be, if I just didn't understand why that happened, etc. You know, sometimes I just sat there and was like, okay, is it me not understanding the book right now because it is a very ambitious vocabulary, or is the character confusing right now? The one thing that I really didn't like and that made me really angry at times is she's fat shaming people in here. There are 3 bigger sized people, and they're all clumsy, and they are all laughed at by the people around them and treated really poorly by the people around them. So that, first of all. And then she also describes them in a very negative way. Like, there was a situation where one of the bigger sorcerers was carrying the backpack up a mountain, and then he gave the backpack to another sorcerer who was a lot smaller, so she made that very clear. And that sorcerer had to shorten the straps of the backpack to fit his very tiny body. And there were just certain descriptions, and he was like, that's unnecessary. Like, why would you say it this way? I don't get it. And that's something that I really disliked about this book. And it was not just once, it was throughout the entire book. Like, there was one main character where she continuously did that, and then 2 side characters that she pretty much introduced as being fat and clumsy and dumb, and, you know, everybody laughs at them, so, kind of like that. And I was like, no, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. And I will see if that continues, because that would be something where I would DNF the series for. If this stops with the continuing books, I will probably continue the series, but that made me really angry at times. But yeah, so I have to definitely, this is a series I have to continue to really build an opinion. There's so much more to explore. There's so much more to dive into. So I'm really looking forward to learning more of it, and maybe even continue broadening my vocabulary, although the retention of all the big words here that I looked up is non-existing. So definitely a book that starts a lot of conversations. So as you know, there's a bigger buddy read going on with like Jimmy and Joanna, AP. I think Ellen is joining, I'm not sure. And I talked on Jimmy's Discord with all the folks that were reading that, and we had a lot of conversations about that. And that is, one, really helpful in understanding the story, but also a very different experience for me than I have with a lot of other books. So that's a big plus on that side. So as you see, I have a lot of things that I find interesting, and then I have things where I'm like, is it too much? I really didn't like this, so that's why I thought 3 or 5, you know, is a good medium. It's really hard to rate this book on its own without seeing all the other stuff. So that pretty much wraps up July. And now in the first week of August, I finished one book already. And I'm in the middle of another book that I don't think I will need much time with because I am loving this, but I'm getting ahead of myself again. So the book that I finished is Mercury's Shadow by P.J. Garson, which is the first book in a YA sci-fi trilogy. And I already got book 2 because they had it on Amazon for $4. And I was like, are you kidding me? A $4 paperback? Of course I'm ordering this. So, so I liked it, clearly, enough to continue with the series. This is part of an escapist book tour that I'm part of, so I'm not going into detail for that because my review is actually scheduled for August 14th. I'm not sure yet if I'm doing a video review on that or if I'm just reviewing it on Instagram. But it was fun. So it's a quick and easy read. It is super entertaining. So the book is about Jim, who is a young woman who stumbles kind of into a conspiracy of a huge company, like think Amazon, Google, that type of size of company that kind of owns the entire world with their technology, stumbles into a conspiracy where they are deploying satellites around the sun to commercialize sunlight and wanting to sell that as energy. But they're figuring out, okay, there's more behind that than just commercializing the sun. There are some more dangerous things behind that. And she's kind of drawn into that and is now helping the resistance going against this company. There are some Star Wars kind of hints in here. I had like a Yoda moment in there and some other things like a Death Star moment in here too. And it was kind of a fun Easter egg type of situation, I think. I really liked the robot character that she hangs out with. So people there have robots to do work for them and whatnot. And the robot that belongs to her is super, like, really good, well written. I really liked them. It's fun and entertaining. Like, that's really what it is, which is why I wanted to continue with that series. It's a trilogy. I think book 3 is coming out later this year. I've seen the cover for it, definitely. But also the covers are both pretty gorgeous here. So I'm excited to continue with that series eventually, not this month. Great palette cleanser in between some more ambitious books. Talking about a bit more ambitious again, I am currently in the middle of A Labyrinth of Science and Sorcery, book 2 in the Risen Kingdom series by Curtis Craddock. I am loving this. So I started this yesterday, and you see I already started tabbing things because the way he describes certain things is just brilliant. And I'm a bit more than a third through already. So yeah, I definitely read long into the night yesterday. There's a character named Josephine in the book. Very short scene. Nothing, not an important character and spelled wrong, but but that's totally okay. And I am loving this story. Isabel is fantastic as she was in book 2. Jean-Luc is fantastic as he was in book 1, excuse me. And all the characters that we got to know in book 1 are back again, and it's just so much fun to follow along. It is smart. It is well written. I love his use of various European languages that he draws in, like there are German, French, Spanish kind of anecdotes in here and certain words used on describing certain magical characters, and it's just so well done. He definitely did his research. I think at least that's what it feels like when it comes to naming certain characters, and it absolutely makes sense, at least from the German ones that I understand from a language perspective. French and Spanish, not so much. I don't know what it is, but I'm eating this up. Like, this is the type of prose that I'm loving. It is a bit more ambitious, but it's completely understandable. And I'm not trying to bash Janny Wurts on that, right? It's on the author's own discretion, and that is every author's choice on how they're writing stuff. So I definitely don't mean anything negative by that. Just because I don't understand certain things doesn't mean it's bad, right? But anyway, but this is completely up my alley, exactly the way I like it. I love the descriptions. I love the humor in it. It has the right amount of snark in it, and I'm all there for that. And then it continues with having floating islands, airships, really interesting magic. I'm still so fascinated by this magic system in this series, and it's just brilliant. This is a buddy read together with so many people. Leslie is continuing the series, Kate Coy, Sarah from Fairy reads, I think Miss Richards reads, Stephanie too, and we all love book 1. And ladies, I cannot wait for you to get to book 2. Seriously, it is so good. I'm probably reading half the night again, which shows you, like, if you think about it, my last 3 books were so different from the writing style, right? I mean, if you look at that, they were so vastly different from the way the story is told, from the prose. And that's why I love reading, because you get exposed to so many different things. And one of the things that Jimmy said, it's like, it's an art, right? That the author, a book is art, and an author expresses their art by their use of language, by the use of words. And it's so fascinating to use that kind of as an analogy, to see, like, to view into people's heads and how they dream up things and how they express those dreams to others. And it's truly fascinating. Anyway, I'm getting philosophical here, which is not really my thing, but this book does it to you. I'm telling you, this book, really, if you are okay with ambitious language, give this a try. It is so unique the way this is written, and I don't think I've seen ever anything like this. I mean, it's, yeah, discussion. I'm telling you, that's what this book is good for, to have a conversation about a book. That's what I wanted to cover. One of the exciting things that happened over the last 2 weeks too is we finished the round of the 2nd edition of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Book Box. So if you haven't seen those videos yet, I put the playlist down below. It was 10 stops this time. It was good. It was a lot of fun. And Alan found a book this time that he liked. So that's all I wanted from the 2nd edition. But anyway, so definitely check that out, and subscribe to all the folks that joined in the Traveling Book Box. And if you're new here because of that, well, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. I hope you enjoy the content that I'm creating. I'm always open for feedback. And then I hope I see you soon with another video. Have a great day till then. Bye.